Hey, Rational Explorers, Farid here, and today on the Rational Farid, we're tackling a question that might just shake your understanding of one of the most influential books ever written. Did the Bible not exist before the Hellenistic period? For centuries, most people have just assumed the Bible's stories are ancient history penned by eyewitnesses or people living very close to the events themselves. We're talking about narratives like the Exodus, King David, and the Israelite monarchy, often envisioned as millennia old accounts. But what if I told you that the Hebrew Bible, what many call the Old Testament as we know it, is likely a much younger creation, a product of a vibrant, cross cultural era far later than traditionally thought, compiled, and edited with specific agendas in mind? We're talking about the Hellenistic period, that incredible era sparked by Alexander the Great's conquests, where Greek culture permeated the ancient Near East, creating a melting pot of ideas, languages, and philosophies. And this isn't just some fringe theory cooked up in a basement. We're drawing on the groundbreaking, sometimes controversial, but always thought provoking work of scholars known as biblical minimalists. One of the leading figures in this field is the legendary Dr. Niels Peter Lemche, Professor Emeritus of Theology at the University of Copenhagen. He's dedicated decades to meticulously analyzing the evidence and challenging these deeply ingrained traditional assumptions. Biblical minimalism isn't about saying the Bible is fake, but rather asking, what does the evidence truly support? What happens when we stop assuming and start critically examining the very foundations of these texts? It's a true paradigm shift, and it completely changes how we read and understand one of the world's most impactful books. Now, you might be thinking, Farid, what about archaeology? Doesn't all that digging prove the Bible stories are true, connecting real places to real events? And that's a perfectly natural thought, because we're often told archaeology confirms the Bible. But here's the rub, and it's a big one. As Dr. Lemche points out, many scholars approach archaeology with a very specific mindset. They come to the dig site with a spade in one hand and the Bible in the other. What does that mean? It means they're often looking at the Bible first, then trying to match the ground data to its narratives, even when that data might contradict the biblical account. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole by just forcing it harder. Archaeological data isn't innocent. It's not a straightforward yes or no answer. It needs interpretation. And guess what? Scholars don't always agree on how to interpret it. What one person bends and twists to fit a biblical narrative, another sees as a blatant contradiction or evidence for a completely different historical picture. The bias, whether conscious or unconscious, can heavily influence what's found and how it's presented. But here's the really crucial point, one that fundamentally shifts how we should view these ancient texts. Ancient writers weren't like modern historians trying to meticulously document what happened in a purely factual, objective way. Their purpose was often profoundly different. They were crafting stories for moral lessons, shaping cultural identity, or advancing political agendas. Think of someone like Plutarch, the famous Greek biographer. When he wrote his Parallel Lives, his primary goal wasn't just documenting precise historical facts. Instead, he was using the lives of famous Greeks and Romans to illustrate good or bad examples of human behavior, virtue, and leadership for his audience. It was history for the present, with the future in mind. As Dr. Lemche emphasizes, a tool for education and shaping society, not just a factual record. You can't go to an ancient text, like the biblical ones, and start it with only modern ideas in the head. We have to understand their context, their aims. So, if not ancient, then when? Minimalists point squarely to the Hellenistic period as the highly probable time for the Bible's composition, or at least its final compilation into the form we largely know today. And they have some compelling evidence. One key piece of evidence is what scholars call a terminus antiquem. That's a fixed point in time before which a text absolutely could not have been written. Dr. Lemche identifies one such point: the death of Queen Arsinoe II in 272 BCE. He finds a direct parallel to her death, being killed by a woman throwing a stone, specifically referenced in Judges chapter 9. This isn't a vague similarity, it's strikingly specific, suggesting the book of Judges couldn't have been compiled much before that date. Even clearer, consider Ezekiel the tragedian. Writing around 200 BCE, this playwright directly quotes the book of Exodus in his work. This tells us definitively that the book of Exodus existed by that time. But how much before? Not necessarily centuries. Imagine a place like Alexandria in the Hellenistic era, a massive city, a huge Jewish quarter, and, crucially, the unparalleled Library of Alexandria. A brilliant group of scholars in such an intellectual hub could have compiled, edited, and even crafted these stories in a matter of weeks, months, or a few years. We know giants like Virgil, Plutarch, and Diodorus of Sicily wrote volumes far more than the entire Bible within a single lifetime. The idea that it took centuries to compile these texts simply isn't necessary. And what about King David? The famed House of David mentioned on the Tel Dan inscription? While traditionalists jump for joy at this supposed proof, minimalists like Dr. Lemche and Thomas L. Thompson have questioned its authenticity from day one. The way the inscription is carved, it looks suspiciously like a later addition or even a forgery. And get this, no one has ever done a definitive scientific test on the stone to prove its authenticity. Why not? Because if it's fake, a massive pillar of traditional biblical history crumbles. Plus, House of David could simply be an honorific title like House of Windsor, refers to a royal family, not a literal descendant of a mythical founder named Windsor. This isn't just academic nitpicking. It hits a nerve because David is deeply significant to modern Israel, even secular Israelis, as a national founding figure. When it comes to proving the Bible's historicity, there's a serious problem with the argument. Lack of evidence is not evidence of lack. As Dr. Lemche correctly states, that's just forced logic. Lack of evidence is evidence of lack. We can't keep saying it might have happened when there's simply no data to support it. That's how we get Atlantis theories, Bigfoot sightings, and alien abductions, not actual historical understanding. So, if these biblical stories aren't historically true accounts of ancient events, then why were they written? They weren't just randomly made up out of thin air. Instead, we see them as brilliant, complex, literary works crafted with very specific purposes in mind, often drawing heavily from the rich tapestry of older surrounding cultures. Many biblical narratives show striking resemblances to older myths from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the broader Greek world. Take the tragic sacrifice of Jephthah's daughter in Judges 11. It's eerily similar to the Greek myth of Iphigenia, where a father sacrifices his daughter for perceived divine favor or military success. Even the harrowing story of Abraham and Isaac, where a ram miraculously appears to save the son, echoes the Greek myth of the golden fleeced ram saving Phrixus and Helle from sacrifice. And perhaps the most famous example, Noah's Ark. It borrows directly from the much older Gilgamesh epic, even including a seemingly superfluous detail like sending out a raven that only makes thematic sense if you know the Babylonian version of the flood story. This isn't about coincidence. It's about reworking existing cultural narratives. These weren't unique, divinely revealed stories appearing in a vacuum. They were often human adaptations of popular tales, common motifs, and archetypal themes, all cleverly tailored for a new audience and a new purpose. We even see connections between the dying and rising god Tammuz from Mesopotamia and the Greek Adonis. These powerful ideas of death, rebirth, and fertility permeated the entire ancient world, influencing narratives across cultures. Now, for the compelling reason behind all this compilation and adaptation, Dr. Lemche believes the Bible's final compilation was essentially a political program. Imagine the Hasmonean dynasty in the 2nd century BCE, fresh off their victory over the Seleucid Empire. They were trying to unite a region historically fragmented where Judah and Samaria, for instance, didn't even like each other, each claiming to be the true Israel. What better way to do it than to craft a shared origin story, a unified past, creating a common identity and legitimizing their rule? They could even justify destroying rival sanctuaries, like the Samaritan temple on Mount Gerizim, The Bible then becomes a powerful tool for identity formation, consolidating power and asserting dominance, claiming the traditions of the North and cleverly converting them into their own narrative. It's human creativity, political ambition, and the art of storytelling all rolled into one. So, what's the big takeaway, rational explorers? The evidence we've explored today strongly suggests that the Bible, as a compiled and coherent text, is not the ancient, divinely recorded history many believe it to be. Instead, it's a brilliant, complex, and politically charged piece of literature largely crafted during the Hellenistic period. Dr. Lemche sums it up perfectly. The important thing is the discussion about what may have happened and the discussion about the text we have, what is telling us. Understanding the Bible as a product of human creativity, influenced by other cultures and serving specific political and ideological purposes, doesn't make it a lie in the moral sense. It simply changes how we engage with it. Its power lies not in being historical, but in being great poetry and a great story to tell. Your salvation, if you will, isn't dependent on whether King David literally ruled a massive kingdom 3,000 years ago. The value shifts from historical fact to its enduring human impact. What are your thoughts on this groundbreaking perspective? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown insightful, hit that like button, subscribe to the Rational Farid for more deep dives into history, philosophy, and critical thinking, and share this video with anyone who's ready to rethink old assumptions. Stay rational, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.